in Pakistan based on my journey. So first question, is design complicated? This is the word design with the quotes, without the quotes, with the capital D, any formation. Let's see, if you Google design, one simple search will get you something like this, which is a complete blowout chart of what are the particular nuances within design. We've probably seen visual design and user experience overarching everything else, but at the same time, there are just a lot of variants within it, and you can have 10 different people with 10 different strong opinions fight it out and die. And then we have simpler versions of it where we've heard about the designer unicorn, where we see that there is visual design at the top, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, and you have other things like usability, information architecture, and research content, etc. Then you have more technical definitions. So this, I think this is either from an IBM study or a McKinsey study, where they've basically broken this design into three sort of eras, where they call classical design as the past or the traditional way of doing things, heavily influenced by the Industrial Revolution. Then you have the modern day design thinking, which focuses on innovation and working to solve actual real world problems. Then in terms of the future, we're talking about computational design, where we're really talking about how do you build for the next billion of users and figure out how to go from one to many. And it's not literally about the face of it anymore. And countless of others, and I can probably spend hours just defending each of these things, but at the same time, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all of this information. This is another example of how confused we are. So what you see in front of me is 5 different nuances or wings within design. There's very strange trajectory, but one interesting thing is something happened in 2012, which led to more terms being used for UI UX. And you see this. I wish I had a pointer, but I wish towards the end of it you can see the increase. Cool. So what's my conclusion from what I've said so far? Stop believing in labels and just learn from them instead. And I personally am saying this from something which I've personally practiced. And this is an attempt to share my learnings. Very quickly, we'll be touching upon the fundamentals or the most important things, but at the same time, a lot of it will be heavily based on what I've been through. My hope is that it's possibly a lot of something which you guys can connect us with. The first label, I think majority of the audience, if not a very high comparators, digital in a lot of cases, visual designers in an agency. The role breakdown is the following. So you spend most of your time working around, and then some bit of it is just planning. But then as you go more senior, you spend more and more time just trying to figure out and plan things along. Oops. Your day-to-day is a lot of design, where you're either part of a studio or you're a visualizer in some agency terms. You really work with creative teams, planning teams, strategy teams. Some agencies will have all of them, some agencies will have none of them. Your POC is usually a client service creative team member, maybe a copywriter, creative lead, planner, whatever. And then they get briefs from the clients, they face them directly, and then you get their translation or worldview. Once you're done, especially in print, you hand it off to the media team, where they figure out where to budget, where to pull the billboards and take it forward. In retrospect, 3 things really shout out. And again, there are a lot of many others, but I think these are the 3 very prominent ones. So if you look at this list, I fail to see who's the user representative in this. So user, like forget the user, there is no user in either of these, but I fail to see who's even representing the user. Is it us, or is it the designer themselves? Is it the strategy teams? It is the client service? Is it the client service copywriters? One can argue easily that it's the client service because they represent the client who represents the user, but that's again, as you've easily seen, and I hope you've seen by now, it's easier said than done, and that's anything close from being reality. So leads to limited user validation, and as a result leads limited iteration. I've yet to see an ad agency or any creative agency who does marketing communication, say a pilot with 10 or 100 users, figure out, oh, okay, we tested this with 10, 15 actual consumers. They give us this feedback, we iterated, and then we had the final print result. It's just about getting done with the next campaign, pushing it, and applying for the next bid. And again, it's a make and break sort of a communication. And primarily, how do you prioritize within multiple clients? I personally face this a lot. It's usually done by seniors when you're junior, and I was on the junior side of things, but it's very difficult to have this challenge. Coming to the useful stuff, if you can, if you could relate from all of this, try these things out before you blame yourself or start feeling down. Learn from the best creative agencies of the world. A lot of teams have figured this out, have figured out the ideal agency model with happy people both in and out of the organization. See what are the best practices, see if you can bring them to your teams. Test, test, test. I can't emphasize this enough. This is something which I learned very late. Test each and everything, very raw, very dirty, doesn't matter. Try things out with your parents, siblings, friends, etc., depending on your audience. Now, proceeding with caution, build a great relationship with the client. If you can do that, tell them that they're wrong and they need to also use a test and learn from end users. Even proceed with caution. And this is one of the best advice which was given to me. If you're feeling down, if you have tangible proof that this isn't the right place for you, you should switch and you should look for better places to work. Cool. Label two, being mindful of the time. So agencies, but as an UI UX designer, working with multiple clients. The role breakdown is pretty similar, but then you're spending a lot of time iterating as well. So it's slightly more user focused over here. As you get towards more seniority, you spend a lot of time with meetings and planning. And by the way, when I say planning, I also refer to a lot of service design work. In business terms, it's also in a lot of different teams. And again, it's not necessary, but a lot of service design work is considered planning and long-term strategies as well. Relatively better in some ways, but what's missing? Let's see. So you're generally working with engineering and product teams. You get a project brief from the client. You have the general software development lifecycle. You sign off to the design from the client. They hand it over to dev. You collaborate and basically talk it out till you get this done, and this reaches the finish line. But where's the impact? And this is something which I've, again, another reflection which I found out pretty late, and that is, where's the impact in all of these things? Is your role to design or is it to solve problems? And we do push the product to the finish line, but did it solve the problem? And that is one question which we as designers, or anyone for that matter should ask at all points. So delivery focus versus impact focus, which has been an observation. You have limited ownership. How do you even iterate for multiple clients? And then if you're in an agency as a UI UX designer, literally try these things out, learn experience metrics. I think there were a couple of talks earlier in the day who mentioned it. Sapa mentioned PMF. Try to understand the business side of things. Literally deep dive, indulge yourself into how the business operates. Whoever you're designing for, sit with the sales guys. There are a lot of talks which emphasize this. Figure this out. Have a partner mindset and not a client mindset. And by the way, we've had a lot of fraternity conversation where this is something which is disputed, and would love to break it down sometime later. Finally, getting to the product designer in the tech company label. And by the way, when I say product designer, for the purpose of this talk, it might as well be either of these. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is anyone who is a user stakeholder who owns the usability of a solution. And Suleiman mentioned in his intro in the morning, this, and again, this is a slide taken from that. We ideally, these are roles which are infused in teams. So my day-to-day team, our domain teams, we work within engineering, we have designers, product. and engineers in the same room, along with business stakeholders as well. And the role breakdown's pretty similar. I think there's more collaboration piece in terms of communication with other teams as you junior, but then as you go senior, it's pretty similar in terms of the day split. And I hope one reflection from all the three labels is that the more senior you get, the more occupied you will be in meetings. Um, and the picture on the right is just me with our care tech team, where we were experimenting with this experience programming session where everyone's working towards building very small feature improvements to literally push to the store within a matter of 1.5 hour or 2 hours at max. But the idea is that we do this every week on Fridays towards the second half of the day to get actual user value out within a very short amount of time. And this is basically what collab should look like ideally. So it's about working with domains. You get high level company goals on almost quarterly annual basis, and then you sit with your teams to prioritize things, and you collaborate with everyone included to get the things to the finish line. Things, and I won't, obviously it's a lot of these things are pros and cons heavy. I can only talk about the things which took me by surprise. The first one is iteration, and I think it is possibly the biggest reflection from everything which I've said so far. So how I'm pretty sure a lot of people didn't know that Careem never had an app, and they started with a web page. This basically filled a form in a Google sheet in the background, and people actually were in the back behind the scenes calling customers and captains, hey, would you like to go to the airport at 4 a.m. in the night? We have a captain, and vice versa. So this is what the first version of Careem looked like on the left. I'm pretty sure it's not the first version. It's, let's say, one of the earlier versions of Careem. And then what you see on the right is an improved version, hopefully. And then this is the verify screen, the beloved, where you enter the promo codes and the discounts. The one on the left is where we started. The one on the right is where we're currently at. And I think there are a couple of experiments which are also breaking this barrier, and we're improving as we go. This is where you dispute for your rides and you check your trip receipts. Again, we had a card form at the time. We didn't know that people will be making 5 rides daily, but then obviously soon enough we moved into a model and iterated to become better. So the second bit is appreciation for complexity. So the easiest way to understand how complex Careem is the tip of the iceberg. On the tip, you see the customer and you see the captain. And yes, it's as simple as tap on the push of a button. But then there are a lot of these teams involved who make this happen. So from a day-to-day perspective, you see ETAs. The quicker ETAs is the marketplace team. There is a dedicated team of people who make sure this is the lowest possible. There is intelligence and data behind everything. There are a lot of experimentation to make sure the experience is the best possible thing, which Careem can provide to that customer. Then, of course, there are a lot of firefighting which is happening because we are a operations heavy business. Then there are a lot of support and tech functions, which of course each of these are like, they look like labels right now, but they're actual people who are full time employed to make sure that the experience is better, and it's not just the designer making this happen. So appreciation for complexity is the other upcoming. And finally, design documentation is another reflection. Special shout out to everyone who signed up for the workshop. And again, in front of the audience, I'd also like to say that based on the overwhelming response, and again, I'm sorry for anyone who hasn't been able to get shortlisted, I'll post separately for another workshop on UXDP. And I'm saying this live so that I can hold myself accountable for this later. So what is documentation? So this is just an example of one doc which I've done for the ride history. So the whole idea is that you spend time documenting progress of what you do while you work. So the idea was that we were revamping our section for the ride receipts, and you see that there is a complete thorough documentation of each and every screen, each and every variant. We have versions where you include numbers, metrics, and a lot of other details go into it. Being mindful of time. Again, this is just a snippet of what those who are attending tomorrow will be missing, who won't be missing, to be honest. Caveats, a lot of the fancy stuff, but this is something which you also need to get used to if you're this role. There is a lot of monotony because you a lot of what you do may not see the light of the day for quite a long time. This can be years, this can be quarters in a lot of cases. It can get demanding because generally it's a generalist versus a specialist approach. Teams are small. You will have to change a lot of roles based on the team dynamics and the need at the time. So I've written code in some point, and by the way, when I say code, I say HTML. I won't like flatter anyone, but this is HTML. But it was the need of the moment. I literally project managed a couple of projects because, and there was absolutely no need, no design requirement, but it was the need of the moment. And obviously, we've used it as to design things, and you make compromises at scale. A lot of the time, it's not about getting that pixel perfect, but getting it to the user so you have that impact. Further probes to question your labels. You literally, and again, this GIF represents it pretty well. You have to juggle between your own priorities. You can learn data analysis, you can defend and debate, you can learn facilitation, but eventually, all of these is something which you should question. These are some things which you can literally learn. Start today. You should get your hands dirty, ask questions, have a bias for everything, test everything, question everything. Again, I hope you see a trend in my things. Be curious, keep on learning. um, and literally business, like I'm very glad that a lot of the themes from the conversation today have been to learn and to collaborate with other stakeholders, and I will highly just compliment their voice and their opinion as well. Make progress one stepping stone at a time and reach out. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. It's very easy to reach out to people on the internet. I've made amazing friends and fraternity members, and thankfully Pakistan is evolving. And these are just three platforms: UXPP Design Foundation, but there are a lot of other platforms and silos at the moment, but we need to come together as a collective and get things done. Thank you. And I think I've went over, but let me know, Suleiman, if we can take questions. So just to repeat the question for everyone, the question is, I saw you took a few courses online. How was that? And how did you did that shape your design? So I think it's also mentioned in the bio. So I've taken the Interaction Design Specialisation in 2017, which was offered at Coursera. It was like sponsor driven, but the idea is that it did really support me in terms of giving you visibility of what is the possibilities of what an interaction design needs to learn, or at least give you these intro stepping stones of where you need to start off with. Eventually, nothing itself is sufficient if it's not applied. So thankfully, I still am in a position where anything which I am learning, I prioritize to also apply it as we go. So that's, I think, the key. Coursera courses are amazing, provided that you take them seriously and then you put it to use ASAP. And I think this is something which this step is something which we as a community miss. We have a lot of courses, a lot of fancy workshops, but unfortunately we don't take it to application in our day to day. And I think that is something which needs to be addressed. And by
Perfect.
the way, guys, in case some questions, like I make it a point to be accessible. So in case you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm hopefully going to reply soon. So I think that's pretty much it from my side. Thank you.
All right, Arslan, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you on the panel later today.
Awesome.